So, I keep reading these stories about the fact that sperm count among males in the United States and in Western Europe is going down dramatically. And this is based on a 2017 paper that is a meta-study of a bunch of research that suggests that this is the case. It has since been repeated over and over and over again. And it's become like a truth out there. It's just nobody questions it and nothing. And then in February of this year, a book called Countdown was published by one of the authors of the original study. It's called Countdown, where she's basically saying the human race is finished by 2045. Western men, when in the Western world at least, where this is particularly bad, are going to be completely infertile. And population is going to basically go to zero, and particularly in the West. Now, a lot of kind of right-wing, alt-right types have, or racist, have latched onto this and turned it into some kind of conspiracy against white men, and because it's only white men's sperm that is declining, and sperm counts for, African men or Asian men or whatever are not tanking. And this has become a huge issue. Just put in, I think I did this. I need to find out, where did I? Yeah, you just put in into Google News sperm count, and you get male fertility, how everyday chemicals are destroying sperm count in humans and animals. So it turns out it's chemicals, it's plastics, it's all kind of chemicals we use daily that are destroying our capabilities as men to produce sperm. So the fact that we're having fewer babies is not because of female infertility, and it's not because of choices we make to have fewer kids. It's because men don't have enough sperms to reproduce. Rapidly dropping sperm count, imperiling the future of humans, says experts. Sperm counts are on the decline. Is the human race? Dozens of these articles. Sperm count in men has fallen by over 50% in 40 years. Who's to blame? Let's go get him. We should hack him. Everyday spermageddon. This is a good one. Spermageddon. Yeah, everyday chemicals lead to 50% drop in sperm counts. Is pollution shrinking penises and depleting sperm counts? Well, we'll get to the shrinking penises in a little bit. How everyday chemicals are destroying sperm counts in humans and animals. We read that one again. Anyway, this is just repeat. And then, of course, they go to Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. Does it affect sperm? God, people are obsessed with the sperm count. Maybe they should sell little kits where we can get a daily sperm count. How we're doing. Unbelievable. Anyway, well, I mean, it would be believable if maybe it's good science. Maybe it really is believable. Now, anytime I see studies that link human extinction, imminent, 2045, with pollution and chemicals and progress and human success and technology and plastics, I'm always suspicious. Armageddon, Spermageddon, global warming-mageddon, Y2K-mageddon, what was the other one? Population bomb Armageddon. There's no end to these. No end to these. And they almost always, no, not almost, they always turned out to be false. Panicky, misinformation, bad statistics, bad thinking, bad reasoning. And shockingly, it turns out that that is the case here. So this is the article, The Doomsday Sperm Theory. The idea that male fertility is on the decline is an old myth dressed up as science. So people have looked at the 2017 study and re-examined the data and looked at it. And like most of these studies recently, It's not replicatable. Now, for example, I'll give you some examples of this is the bad use of statistics. It's just mind-boggling, bad use of statistics. So let's say sperm counts were at a certain level 20 years ago. And let's say sperm counts at a lower level today. And we draw a line, a linear line between the two. And then we say we want to know what sperm counts are going to be in 20 years, let's say by 2045. How do we figure that out? Well, if you have just two data points, the temptation is to draw a line between them and to continue that line for another 20 years and see where you get to. But that's called dumb stats, dumb science. You can't extrapolate from 2 points to a third. You don't know that the relationship is linear. You have no idea what the shape of the graph is. Maybe it goes like that. Maybe it goes like that. Maybe it flattens out. You have no idea. You can't extrapolate the data into the future. And yet this idiot who wrote this paper and this book just extrapolated. That's how we get to 0 sperm count in 2045. Now, what's interesting, if you take that line and if you extrapolate backwards 20 years and you get to a certain number, it turns out that that number is significantly higher than what the sperm count actually was 20 years before that. And yet she extrapolated only in one direction. Got a wrong answer. It's unbelievable here. Then it turns out that, of course, this sperm count decline, which there's no proof of, by the way, no real proof of. There's some data that suggests that in the West, sperm count has declined. It's not definitive. It's not clear. It's not clear which parts of the West, where exactly, which men. The control studies were very bad. The statistics are ambiguous. It's very, very, very poor science in a very, very poor scientific area to begin with, and with very, very lousy stats. But then it turns out that the hypothesis is that it's chemicals, plastics, causing the sperm count to go down. Why? Well, the title of one of the subchapters of the article debunking all this has it right. Correlation doesn't equal causation. So they don't know why sperm count is going down. They attribute it to chemicals just because they need an explanation, and it's convenient to blame plastic. And the environmentalists have a strong interest in doing that. Erin Brockovich, famous environmentalist activist, wrote in The Guardian in March that hormone-disrupting chemicals are decimating fertility. By what measure? Where's the causation? Is this established? Is this science? It turns out that there are papers that, so there's a paper called Endocrine Disrupting Chemicals, Impacts on Human Fertility, and it's not conclusive. Not conclusive. So there's no evidence, but they say it like it's true. And it seems consistent with the environmentalist message from whatever, so they just accept it as true without thinking about it, without challenging it. And they say it over and over and over again. All right, so it's all selective reporting. So don't believe this stuff. Don't believe the alt-right when they say it. Don't believe the environmentalist left when they say it. Everybody is pitching a political agenda over this sperm going down. But it's all this selection bias, there's bad statistics, bad causation. generally, it's hard to believe any of these studies that relate statistical correlation to causes. Right? Now, one of the arguments, one more thing about sperm count, is that even if it's true that the sperm count in Western men is declining, who's to say that it used to be at the right level and then now it's too low? There's no evidence of that. It seems like the sperm counts in males, in Western males, even though they're declining, are just as high as they are in males of other geographic locations, even though theirs have not declined. So maybe they were abnormally high 20, 30, 40 years ago. Who knows why? But these are the kind of questions you've got to ask, and nobody does. Well, somebody does, because people, people question this stuff. But the panic, Berkowitz writes in an article, that would mean no babies, no reproduction, no more humans. It's just nonsense, and it's anti-scientific. It's exactly what the environmentalists do all the time. All right, so let's talk about shrinking penises. So there's another claim, which is partially clickbait and partially a, quote, scientific study, that is based on one single study. And this is, again, a study that links smaller penis size to chemicals. It's one study of 383 young men from Veneto region in northeastern Italy. And it links the men's penis size to a type of chemicals, same chemicals that the study says, is decimating sperm counts. So it turns out that in Veneto, there are geographic zones with varied levels of PFAS, the chemicals contamination. And I'm reading for this article. A group of 212 men who live in the areas with high or intermediate PFAS exposure and had higher levels of these chemicals in their bodies had an average penis size of 8.6 centimeters, about 10% lower than the average of the group of 171 men from an area that had no exposure to these chemicals. Now, I don't know, well, we'll get to it, but a few features of this study cause us to question it. One, penis size is determined before you're born. Its genital size is determined before birth. The environment during the mother's pregnancies is what's relevant for penis size, right? So they didn't control for where the men were born, where their mothers actually lived. Which is what actually matters. Now, the PFAS regions, the PFAS levels in these regions are truly extreme. They're much more polluted than most other places anywhere on the planet. But how that affects people, right, even at these extreme levels, is not clear, and it's no reason to assume that it has anything to do with penis size, since, again, penis size is determined before birth. And then they didn't control for all kinds of things, and they never, in the measurements, they never tell us how they measure this, right? Did they do it consistently? Was the room temperature always the same? I mean, we're talking about 10 percentage points here. What was the posture? How aroused were they? I mean, there are a million things that you would need to control for to do a proper study. These things are absurd, ridiculous, and all geared towards fear-mongering and resentment of industrialization. Don't believe this crap. It unfortunately taints so much science. So much science. All right, I think we should at least get to 600 off of that content that you probably wouldn't get anywhere else, except maybe on South Park, right? But that wasn't South Park. That was real.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize. I know this is difficult. Can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute. That man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it. And that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason. A morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right. All right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it. But at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing, whether you're looking at this. And you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share. And you can support the show at JeronBrookShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals, and show your support for the work, for the value hopefully you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.